Okay, so with that, I am starting the recording of the slides as we go over Student Development's Guide to Officer Transitions. And as I had noted, at the end, there'll certainly be time for questions. And if there are specific questions as we go through, we can go over that as well. My name is Mike Paestella, and I'm the Assistant Director of Campus Life for Student Involvement. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you today a little bit about officer transitions and how to help you and your organization move from your current officers and administration to the next one so that you can have a successful new year next year. Now, the transition of officers is a very important process that takes place. And that's something that we see on a national, a state, a local level as governments transition after elections. And it's key to your officers as well for your student organization. And part of what's really important about that is sustaining where things are at. And if you have a smooth transition, you can keep the group moving forward and functioning at a high level. And if it's been a challenging year, which let's face it, this year has been challenging for all of us, it can give a chance for renew, but it can also give a chance to congratulate. And that's something for each of you attending today, and then each of you who are viewing this later. I really want to take a moment to congratulate you, because as officers of your student organizations this year, you've had to overcome and work through a year unlike any prior. Going back to when I was in your shoes as a student leader and officer in organizations, I could have never imagined the situation in the year we had. So really take some time to celebrate getting through this year. Maybe things didn't go exactly as planned. Maybe things didn't work out the way you wanted to, but for some groups, maybe it went better than you expected, or maybe you were able to achieve and accomplish new things that you never thought you could because you were using Zoom and things like that. So think about that as you transition into next year. What were some of the silver linings and good things that you were new this year that you can continue as we open up more for next year? And what things do you want to bring back and work with those new officers that may not know as much about 2 years ago in regards to those in-person meetings and how those played out as you work to transition them as well? So a first step, which will be one of the things I'll show briefly later on, is after you've had your election, even that night, if you want to, or certainly within the next couple of days, is to visit your page in Laker Life and make sure all your new officers are listed. And if you want to do a slight transition period, that's okay. So if you're the current president and you want the new president to be president on your page as well for a bit, so you're both getting my and SA's emails, that's all right. That's not a problem. You can do that. And then as you get closer to the transition being complete, have the previous officers removed that way as you move forward. So the smooth transition is a lot of things. And the first thing it is everybody's responsibility. So the outgoing and incoming officers need to play a role in this process and help the group move forward that way. And this is something that can really help you. So again, you don't lose steam for next year. And so you position your organization to be successful right at the gate as we re-register in the fall and go into the involvement fair and move forward with September programming. It can also be a great moment for closure for those outgoing members. So a chance to acknowledge seniors or grad students or those that are leaving the organization and graduating, and to note and honor them for what they did in their time at Oswego and being part of a group. So that's something to think about how you do that as well. And that can be done in Zoom. Don't let this year hold you back from doing those types of things in a Zoom or distance setting to acknowledge the work of those graduating and moving on. It's a good time for incoming officers, but also for younger members of the organization to learn about things. So if you do, I highly recommend that you look at involving everyone at some point in a transition discussion, because that first year student who just joined the organization or that transfer who just came in, they might be an officer not that far away next year. And if they can be part of this general discussion at an overall meeting, you're helping prepare them too. Or in the event someone transfers, someone doesn't come back, and there needs to be a special election to fill a role in the fall, you have a more prepared body of members to move into that role and move things forward that way. So a lot of things to think about. And again, I'm not going to read through all the bullets on these pages because I know you can see those as I'm kind of walking through some of it. But thinking about how this smooth transition is there, both to help those who are leaving with closure and moving forward as they become alums or former officers of your organization, and for those who are coming in and able to move things forward, try new things, and get things ready for the fall semester that way. Now, for those of you, I know some of you attending might be new officers, some of you attending might be outgoing officers. And so obviously some value here, but the perspective is a little different. So when working with new officers, share with them what's worked and remember to layer that. So share with them what's worked in Zoom, what's worked in Google Meets, what's worked when you were meeting in 201 MCC on a regular basis. Go over some of the challenges you had in regards to, you know what? We thought this was going to work out great as a November program, but we realized it might be a better April program. In thinking about how that plays out, to share that knowledge and where that goes as they move forward. Make sure that all reports are shared. For some of your organizations, there might be a national report, a group like AMA, a group like Circle K. For others, there might be local reports, things that you've written with your advisor or for SA or for the college in that perspective or your national headquarters. Make sure everything's transitioned. Now, for most, that'll be electronically. So it might mean sharing your email through CTS and making sure that the password gets transitioned to the new officers. It means updating that page in Laker Life. It also could be sharing a Google Drive or flash drives or other things that way that your organization has. And for a handful, it might mean meeting with Barbara St. Michelle and going over the transition to a workspace in the point for next academic year as well. Make a point that all your officers get to know those important people so that they know how to transition that way. Oops. My apologies. That was not supposed to happen. So make sure that they know who they have to go to. I know that there are a couple of organizations on campus, and it didn't necessarily work out as well this year because of COVID and our being remote, that they build into training their officers. They'll bring them to the point. They'll show them where their mailbox is. They'll show them where my office is. They'll show them where the pertinent SA offices are. And then they'll introduce me to the president of the organization and basically say to that person in the fall, if you forget everything, remember to come here and find Mike. And then Mike will let you know who you need to talk to, where things need to play out that way. That's the type of thing that I welcome for all of you to do if you want to make that type of connection between me and your new incoming president or officers. But I also challenge all of you to do that with your faculty staff advisor. Make sure that your incoming officers know who that person is, how to get a hold of that person, where they're at. And you might not be able to physically meet with them now, so that might be Zoom as well, and that's okay. But so that they know, oh, that person's here in Rich Hall, or that person's here in Waterman, or where things play out that way. Let them know about your key stakeholders for staff. Where do they go for reservations? Make sure that they know about campus life and all that campus life offers for supportive programming. Just because you didn't get to do that programming this academic year doesn't mean that they shouldn't be ready for next year as things open up, and knowing this is where the campus life staff is, this is where this webpage is, this is where you go to sign out to a room so that you can get it in MCC that way. Making sure that they know the Laker Life page, and that's something that we can meet separately, or you can train them on as well so that they know how to update it, use it, put their events out there. As many of you learned this year, this was the first year that all organizations went through risk management training in addition to Title IX training. So preparing those officers so that they know when you come back in the fall, you've got to go to Title IX training with Lisa Evaneski. You've got to go to risk management training through Campus Life so that they're aware of that. And then for a number of you, going to SA training, and that's the treasurer training that takes place with SA in the fall in regards to the president and treasurer participating in that process. Now, with some of this information, we know there's never a perfect time for me to do this program because some of you have already had your elections, some of you are planning for your elections, and that's why Matthew O'Donnell, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, and I did the elections program a couple weeks ago. And you can view that on our YouTube page if you want to view that program and talked about elections. But some of these things hopefully were given to candidates before they became officers in regards to your constitutions, your bylaws, certain manuals that way, what the job descriptions are. It's because it would be unfortunate for someone to be elected president and then find out, oh, wait, I got to do this. And then they don't want to be in the role. So you want to make sure if you haven't had your election yet, that your candidates are aware of the responsibilities that come with the roles that way. And part of that from the last slide does include Title IX and risk management training that way. Know that the committees are out there. Work with those newer members who maybe didn't have a chance. You may have first-year students this year who were named to a committee but couldn't do a lot of work with it because it was remote. Walk them through what it will feel like in the fall so that they're aware of that. Think about your calendar. And what does that mean? Some organizations have months that they're dedicated to doing a lot of programming and a lot of activity. In outgoing officers, you know, if you're big, if you were an officer of the Women's Center and you know that Her Story Month is March, the month we're in now, you know that there's a lot of work and a lot of programming that happens in March. But the reality is there's reservations that when we're opened up on campus again that probably need to be done in November to prepare for March. There's details that need to be worked out with catering in January to make sure the program goes well in March. And then how the reservation of space, the setup of sound, if a speaker's coming in, working with SA to make sure POs get done in time, all these things that plan out. So walk them through that calendar, because it's one thing to say, hey, on March 25th, we do this great program every year. But what happens in the 3 to 4 months prior to March 25th to bring that to life? And that's something that new officers, you can't assume that they know that, and walk them through that in regards to all these layers of making the reservation, following up with the appropriate office, making sure that everything's in line with SA so that you can go forward and know that your projects are in good shape that way. And if you have guides or checklists or program lists, those are things that you can store on your Laker Life page so that they're there in your documents section so the students can always go back to them in the fall as well. So a good idea, if you know you have that major program and you have your checklist, to upload it there because it'll always be there. It won't get lost that way. All right, so I'm going to stop my share for a moment, and I know everyone's still in the program, but wanted to see if before I jump to show you where some resources are in Laker Life, and I can easily go back to the slides if you'd like me to, but wanted to ask if there are any questions at this point or questions on the slides I could go back to, because it's hard for me to monitor the chat while I'm doing that. So any questions right now? Okay. Then what I will do is go back to the screen share and show you where you can find some resources and make some changes in Laker Life. So as you go into Laker Life, one new thing that we've added as an alert for this time of year is if you were going to use Laker Life for your elections, you can go to this link for the guide and learn more about that. And you can also watch the video of the program that Matt and I did to help with those elections as well. So I'm going to go to our page, Student Involvement, at first to show you some resources, and also to highlight, if you haven't done it yet, that you can link video to your pages here. So we have this great video on being involved in student organizations that the campus marketing and publications office did for us. And then a program that I did on community building is here. so that you can check that out as well. And then if you are posting your programs in Laker Life, in addition to Instagram and other social media, it keeps a record here, but it also shows past events if you click more events. And that's helpful because officers next year would be able to go back and see what's there in a real easy format that way, especially if you have programming months from year to year. Then obviously updating your officers so you know who the new officers are here. But as you come to our page, and I will apologize, some of the, you're going to see a few things here that you won't see when you log into Laker Life because I'm administrator of the page, so all of our documents show up. So it will look slightly different when you log in. But one of the things you'll see is this officer's transition guide, which you'll be able to download and then have. And you can use that actually. That's a reflection of the slides we just went over in the PowerPoint. And you can download that and then go over that and use that to help set up those meetings that take place between the outgoing officers and the incoming officers in the old executive board and the new executive board. So that's there for you. And you will see the new spring 2021 there that way. In a short period of time, there will be an updated checklist as well that you'll be able to download. The advisor guide is always there, so that's something that you can download as well, and it might not be a bad thing to revisit as new officers come into their roles, for them to look at it and for them to have that as they meet with your advisor and you do that transition that way. But I wanted you to know that you will have access to this officer transitions guide. And then as I scroll up, I mentioned our YouTube channel. If you click our YouTube channel, you'll be able to see a lot of the trainings that I've done throughout the year, some student organization videos and other programs there as well. I'm going to stop sharing Laker Life briefly because I pre-downloaded this one form. So just to give you a quick overview, as you download the officer transitions, it is reflective again of our PowerPoint slides in regards to what a smooth transition is when working with new officers, and specific information to give to new officers as well. And I recommend, as you're doing these two things, if the calendar allows it, and Zoom I think makes this a lot easier to go over, is to do what's best for your organization. But if you can do both of these, I think it's great if you can do it. And that is to have that time where the outgoing president can have a one-on-one meeting with the incoming president. Set up that Zoom meeting, that Google Meet, whatever it is, FaceTime when it's one-on-one that way. And talk about that, go over these things that way, because that can really help out. But then also do an e-board meeting to the best that you can in Zoom too, to have that general discussion with all or as many as that can attend of the outgoing and incoming officers too. And depending on your organization and depending on how your programs work, sometimes it's better to do the group one first and then the individuals. Sometimes it's better to do the individuals and then the group. So I really defer that to the organization, because I've seen the order of those programs work well in different ways for different groups. So not knowing what's the best one for your organization that way. And I'm going to stop that again briefly for a second so we can go back into Laker Life. And the other thing I wanted to show you here is that when you go to your organizations, because one of the big challenges, one of the things that new officers have to overcome in being new officers is making sure that they're in the right spot and that they're getting the emails that come out at the end of the spring semester, over the summer, and preparing them for the fall. And sometimes we have organizations that don't re-register on time, miss the involvement fair, miss some of those trainings because the new officers weren't put on their page. So what I'm going to visit is a test group that we have called the ABC Test Club that's set up for me for trainings like this. And as an officer, as you become an officer on your page, you'll notice that you have manage organization, and you can see that on your page. And that's something you can't see until you become one of those officers. And when you click that, it brings you into what the software calls your home page. And you can click your menu, and open up what the software calls your drawer. And in this roster tab is where you update your officers. So in this case, if we knew that we had had our election and we were working on the officer transition for ZABC Test Club, and I was no longer going to be the new member educator, we could just click this pencil and then click that I'm no longer the new member educator, but I'm becoming the president. And then we can click save, and that will take care of itself that way. And then Brandon, it's interesting, he actually wanted to run to become new member educator, so he'll become new member educator, no longer be president, and we can click save. And that's as easy as it is to update your officers. And then you can, the key though is making sure that the officers are on your roster. So hopefully you've updated your roster and your members have joined your pages that way, so you can do that. Otherwise you'll need to invite them or have them click the join button on your page so that they're there. Now, the one thing, the primary contact is normally always the president, and that's up here. You can switch, as you noticed, all of the other roles by the pencil by the person's name, except for primary contact. That one has to be done up here because the software only allows one person in that role. And what's important about the primary contact is we go back to ZABC Test Club is here where there's this contact button, and organizations have this on your page. If an incoming student at orientation or a current student or anyone in our campus community, really for that matter, clicks this contact to send a message to your organization, that will go to the primary contact. So it's important that they know that. And if they have their notifications on, they'll get an email about it. Otherwise, they would come in and click their initial or their picture, and then it would show up in notifications here. So that's something that you can see in your groups. So like I'm part of this group and I get their newsletter when it shows up. It also lets me know when I've run reports and other things taking place that way. Okay. So I am going to stop the share. And at this point, I am also going to stop the recording. So for those of you that are viewing this later on, if you want to reach out to me, again, it's Mike Paestella or michael.paestella@oswego.edu. Happy to do a follow-up with you. And now we're going to have a discussion with those attending today.